Hello, everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We certainly hope you are all well and safe. We know your work continues in your fields and on your land. Many people around Oklahoma rely on OSU Extension all year long, but especially during the springtime. Joining us now is Dr. Damona Doi, who oversees OSU Extension. Dr. Doi, Extension offices are closed to the public statewide, but educators are available to still serve the public, just remotely, of course, like the rest of us.
Yes, we closed our offices to the public several weeks ago, both for the safety of our employees and also for the public that we serve. And so we're trying to use best practices in all of our work. So continuing to stress to everyone to wash their hands, to sanitize, to maintain appropriate distances. And so we're working differently, but still aiming to help answer questions in a timely manner.
So this time of year, there are a lot of questions that come up. Crops are maturing, people are putting in gardens, it's springtime. So how can people get answers to all of their questions? What's the best way to do that?
There are lots of ways to reach out to the local office, and so email is certainly one. Our new website highlights the email addresses for our educators. Our phones are being transferred, and so they're developing materials for social media. So we're adapting trainings that were typically in person to be online. So we're continuing to evolve to respond differently in this new environment.
A lot of producers may be used to their county ag educator, for example, coming out and doing on-farm visits. How are we adapting during this time?
So we've got some guidelines that we've provided our educators. So ideally, you would do it without having personal contact. So maybe you call, give them the address of the field, or I guess first step would be to take some pictures and see if you can identify either disease or insects via picture. If that doesn't work, then maybe point them to the field and they can stop by, look at it, and then call you or email you with their diagnosis. If that's still not solving the problem, then it may be that you can meet in person, maintaining the appropriate social distance, and in an outdoor environment. Hopefully that's a little safer. Again, we're trying to maintain the services that we've traditionally provided at a time when it's really important to people preparing for planting summer crops, for identifying potential problems with the existing crops. There's also a virtual 4-H that people can participate in, and so our educators are creating daily or sometimes more than one daily activity video to describe some things that people can do virtually in 4-H.
Dr. Doi, thanks for your time today. Our best to you and, of course, to our educators all around the state.
Seems like the wheat crop has seen some yellow wheat across the state this year. And last week we were talking about soil nutrients for yellowing wheat, but Bob, there's also some other reasons that may be causing some yellow wheat across the state.
Yeah, that's correct. This year seems to be lots of different reasons that are causing the wheat to be yellow. We've got a number of those things going on, particularly in this plot in front of us. This is one where it happens to be a disease. Some of the residue-borne diseases like tan spot, septoria, and staganospora. In this plot where you see the yellowing of the leaves getting pretty high up into the canopy, those lesions are going to be covered with little black pepper spots that are the fruiting bodies of this fungus.
What kind of treatment options are there for this in the wheat?
Well, if you do have disease from one of these 3 different fungi, of course, an early season application of a fungicide goes a long way to help that. There is some varietal differences in terms of resistance and susceptibility, but there's not a real high level of resistance as there is to things like powdery mildew and leaf rust and stripe rust.
How does this actually impact the production of the wheat?
Well, these fungi actually live on dead tissue. So they infect the tissue, they gain entrance to the tissue, and then they produce a toxin that kills the green leaf tissue, and then they live on the dead tissue from that. So if you get a bad infection of this, that's why you'll see the leaves turn yellow and then brown, because it kills the leaf tissue and then lives on that dead tissue. But there are quite a few other things that are causing some of this yellowing as well that I need to mention. Instead of, also rather than just the diseases, there's a virus disease, barley yellow dwarf, that you're going to see yellow tips of leaves, sometimes purplish color, especially if you've had aphids. And then you can go beyond the diseases. There's a phenomenon we call a physiological leaf spot, which is just sometimes has to do with the alternation of warm and hot temperatures with cool and wet temperatures. You get that, you'll get a spotting in the leaves that's just physiological. It's not a pathogen at all. Freeze itself can cause some yellowing and tip burning. And then you also get tip burning from a genetic trait called leaf tip necrosis, which indicates the presence of a leaf rust resistance gene.
And if producers want to learn more about this, you have a recent publication?
Well, there's a pest e-alert that's put out by the Plant Disease and Insect Diagnostic Lab, and the one I put out last week talked a lot about all of the different things that are causing the yellowing in wheat, and probably be another one the end of this week that will talk about some of the same things with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bob Hunger, Extension wheat pathologist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hi, Wes Lee, and it's great to be back with you for the Mesonet Weather Report. It seems the weather can't decide what season it wants to stay in lately. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we experienced near record-breaking high temperatures. This map shows temperatures on Tuesday were mostly in the high 80s and low 90s. This was 10 to 20 degrees above normal. Next week, we should be experiencing near record-breaking cold temperatures. This is the National Weather Service forecast for April 13th through the 17th. This map is about as blue as you can get. The darker the blue, the higher the likelihood of lower than normal temperatures. They are also showing the risk for hazardous temperatures next week, particularly damaging freezes to be high or moderately high for most of the state. Even far southeast is in a slight risk category. One of our biggest concerns will be wheat damage. This chart from Kansas shows that two things are of most importance: how cold it gets and what stage of growth the wheat is in. Down to about 28 degrees, we are usually pretty good. Below that depends on the reproductive stage. The browns in this first hollow stem map for the latest maturing varieties shows that even the panhandle is at a high probability of being well past first hollow stem. Let's hope for nothing below 28. Next up, Gary will give us a rainfall update.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, a little bit of a different situation we find ourselves in, but the weather continues no matter what. And so does drought, it seems like. Let's get right to the latest drought monitor map and see what we have. But we still have that part of the far western panhandle in severe drought, almost all of Cimarron County now in severe drought. And now we have that moderate drought starting to spread to the southeast into Texas County. So we're watching that area. We're watching that area in the southwest that had a drought previously for a return of drought if we don't get significant rainfall. The last 30 days, we see the general rainfall pattern, a little over an inch across the panhandle to 2 inches in the western parts of the state to more than 4 inches over in the far east. That's our normal rainfall pattern, it seems like all the time. If we look at the departure from normal for the last 30 days, we see those deficits are almost an inch, in some cases at an inch out in the panhandle, and then some pretty good surpluses across most of the southeastern half of the state from 2 to 4 inches, even up to 5 inches. Let's go all the way out to the beginning of the water year. That starts in October 1st, so we go back to the early last fall. We see just a little bit more rainfall in the panhandle, and then we increase as we go from there until we get up into the 30 and 40 inch range out in eastern Oklahoma. We look at the departure from normal for that same time frame, the water year to date. Then we start to see those deficits start to get a little bit larger out in the panhandle, more than 2.5 inches in some cases in the Cimarron County area. And we're luckier than the states surrounding us, at least most of them. If we look at the USDA topsoil moisture map, percent short to very short, this is for last week, we see we're at only 7%. Most of that's probably in the western panhandle. In the middle of spring, our rainiest time of year, so if we need to get rid of drought, It shouldn't be that hard, but it still remains a little bit problematic out there in the Western Panhandle. We'll keep an eye on that for you. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We're moving further and further into spring, but Misha, producers might be seeing a lot of winter weeds still left over in their fields.
Yeah, we're having a lot of winter annuals, produce flowers or head out, as we might say. So starting to see what a lot of those grasses are that have been kind of luring underneath our wheat canopy, which can be good information for planning for next year's winter crop.
So you have some examples of kind of like, to walk us through exactly how to tell the different types of weeds.
Yeah, so all of our extension partners at OSU will take images of weeds. It's nice to know what you're looking at. Of course, grasses can be the most challenging. The first plant that we're seeing head out that's taller than our wheat is our feral rye, which is just a weedy relative of rye that we plant. And it is very difficult to kill, especially in wheat systems that don't have a herbicide tolerant trait like Beyond or Aggressor that we can use in herbicide tolerant crops. We also have a lot of bromus species. They're in the bromus genus. We like to call them all cheat or bromes, but we have many different species. So two that I have in my hand are downy brome and rescue grass. Downy brome is an example of a brome that responds pretty well to some of our ALS herbicides, like PowerFlex, for example. Rescue grass, which is pretty easy to identify from this flat, kind of two-dimensional seed head, it does not respond well to herbicides. It's very aggressive. It can take over fields. So in this case, we would want to know the difference between these two plants.
In regards to this plant that doesn't do well with herbicides, is that something that's a better management practice after harvest, going in, maybe letting the field go fallow and then addressing it then, or what's the best way to approach those types of weeds?
So the best thing to do to manage a plant is to kind of trick it. It is adapting to our cropping systems. So a winter annual grass is gonna do well in a winter annual grass crop. So be thinking about rotation to maybe a summer crop. Rescue grass also happens to be an early emerger. So if you have the luxury to delay your planting date and till ground or spray with glyphosate, that could also be a strategy.
What are on producers' minds right now in regards to weeds and summer crops?
Yeah, so maybe they have a cover-in. They could be terminating. They're starting to get fields prepped for summer crops. If you did have a winter crop in that you're terminating, or maybe you're double cropping, or you had fallow ground, herbicide use in history is going to be really important. Of course, we want to start clean, but we also want to think, what did we put down in the last year? And is that going to affect what my next crop is? Soil pH and some of our soil characteristics can also affect how long a herbicide is going to hang out in the soil.
All right, thanks, Misha. If you'd like some more information on weeds and herbicides, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
We're joined now by Dr. Kris Hiney, our Extension equine specialist, to talk about animal care during the coronavirus. And Kris, I guess the main thing we need to start with is a safety plan, right?
Yeah, so I really encourage owners of horses, pets, livestock, everybody to sort of make some plans just in case you might actually get sick. So some basic thoughts are who might have to come in and take care of your animals if for any reason that you get sick. Ideally, we want to pick somebody that probably is familiar with that species of animal, as well as somebody that's not in our high risk category. So kind of choose amongst your friends who you think can step in and take care of those animals for you. And I would also encourage people to have redundancy in their plan. So don't just identify one person that you might ask to help take care of them, but maybe have that a couple layers deep. Ideally, we always keep a 2-week supply of their essential feed and any medication the animals might have. So for horses horses, essentially we would stock up on our hay and grain supply, make sure they have medications, and write that plan down. So be very, very detailed in your instructions about what that animal would be receiving each day, especially if there's any medications. For horses specifically, they can do pretty well if they're out in a turnout pen, but if that horse is confined to a stall, they need to still have some sort of regular exercise, even if it's just turnout. But again, they may not have to have their same training program as they had under your care.
How about just safety steps and cleanliness steps to take during this pandemic when you are caring for animals?
Sure. So really, theoretically, our animal owners and livestock producers and stakeholders already do practice, hopefully, good biosecurity. So that key of washing our hands after we work with animals, between animals, a lot of that basic behavior can really, go pretty far in helping us maintain our health and well-being. So being as stringent of almost saying we had a disease outbreak in our animals, apply those same principles right now, and that can help maintain human health and well-being.
So we touched on a lot of things today, but there are lots of resources out there. You have some things on your website. We have some things on the Extension coronavirus website.
Yeah, certainly. So definitely visit our OK State Extension for our resources on coronavirus and how it affects agriculture and livestock. And certainly the American Association of Equine Practitioners and the American Veterinary Medical Association always put out really good information for pet owners and horse owners.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kris.
Thanks.
And for a link to those websites, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
We're at that time of the year where we're beginning to think about that upcoming breeding season for next year's calf crop. One of the questions that'll come up for producers, especially those that do artificial insemination, is how well will those 2-year-olds rebreed? We understand that the 2-year-old that had her first calf this spring is still growing, and she is in that process in her life where she's changing from baby teeth to adult teeth. All of this means that it's harder to keep body condition on her into calving and then past calving into the breeding season. Look at this data that comes from the University of Missouri. What they did was look at the impact of body condition score at calving. If you look down the left-hand side of the particular table, and across the top is the change in body condition score after calving through the next 90 days. And then in the table is the number of days that they predicted it would take that heifer to come back into heat to have a chance to rebreed for next year's calf crop, the number of days between calving and return to estrus cycles. I want you to zone in on a couple of key numbers in this table. If you'll look at the body condition score for heifer, that's one I think is too thin. But even though she calved as a 4, they fed her enough to gain a full body condition score between the time of calving and the start of the breeding season. So she's up to a 5 or 5.5. Compare that with a heifer that was in pretty good body condition, 5.5 at calving time, but lost a half a score. When you look at the number of days it took those two particular individuals to return to estrus cycles, you'll see that even though that heifer that was thin was fed a great deal of feed and got additional body condition put on her, she still wouldn't return to estrus as quickly as the one that was in better shape at calving time, even though she lost a little bit. So all of this means to me that it's really, really important for next year when you're growing out your heifers, make sure they're in good body condition. Let's shoot for that body condition score 6 category that we've talked about in the past. Also, this data emphasizes to me the importance of breeding our replacement heifers a little bit ahead of the cow herd so that they have a chance to have longer days between calving and the start of the breeding season and therefore stay on time with the rest of the cow herd. I think if you'll keep those two management ideas in mind, that'll help in terms of getting those replacement heifers off to a better start, more in sync with the rest of the cow herd, rather than lagging behind or coming up with a lower rebreed percentage. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Talking food safety now, Darren Scott from the Food and Ag Products Center sorts out fact from fiction during the coronavirus pandemic.
Current information suggests that there is no foodborne transmission of COVID-19 through food or food packaging. So that's not anything that you need to worry about. The same food safety systems that were in place prior to COVID-19 are still in place now. So the food safety systems, the risk assessment systems that food manufacturers are using, the grocery stores have used, are in place to help keep us safe. One of the things that you don't want to do is apply any sort of a sanitizer or soap directly to your food. You know, the current suggestions from, again, USDA, FDA, are if you want to clean things like produce, use clean running water. Things such as maybe carrots or potatoes, you want to use a clean brush and scrub, again, under clean running water. One of the things that we might want to do to help keep ourselves safe, or at least feel safe, is to apply sanitizers to food packaging. Now, one of the things that you want to be very careful about is that you don't actually cross-contaminate the food that's in the container. It's probably going to be much better, again, to use maybe just a little bit of soap and water to wipe down the outside of the container. But again, you want to be very sure that you don't accidentally cross-contaminate any of the food that's inside the package. Again, because there's no evidence of COVID-19 being transmitted through food or food packaging, that's not anything that the current information that we have suggests that's something that we need to worry about. It's always a good idea, though, to keep separated things like raw ingredient from cooked or ready-to-eat foods. That's just maybe what we would say would be a good food safety practice. So with things like raw meat or even uncooked produce, we want to keep those separate from things that are ready to eat. USDA, FDA, and CDC are always in contact and cooperating with local and state agencies to maintain communication, always looking to see if there's any sort of an outbreak or incidents of foodborne illness. And again, that's always going on. And so those lines of communication are open right now. And again, they're going to be doing the same things that they've always done to make sure that the food that we eat is safe.
Dr. Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, joins us now. Kim, the 2020 wheat harvest is underway, but no doubt the coronavirus is impacting things.
Definitely having an impact on things. The news, most of it's coming out of India. Of course, you know, by June 1, we'll have 25% of the world's wheat harvest completed. The harvest is going on, of course, India, Pakistan, Western Asian countries, North Africa. Most of that news out of India is that they're maintaining a lockdown for the next 2 weeks. They're having a hard time getting harvest employees. They're scared to move from location to location. India's Department of Agriculture has established 22 teams, and as that equipment moves from location to location, they have the sanitizing equipment to sanitize it, to medical personnel to check the harvesting employees as they move from place, and as they pass each checkpoint, they'll give them a letter certifying that they can move on.
What does this mean then as Oklahoma prepares for harvest? What kind of things do producers need to do to get ready for the custom crews that come through here?
Well, you know, they've got the medical checkpoints in the India area. You go back about 20 years, if I can remember right, in Oklahoma, the hard red winter wheat. I think it was a scab problem that we had with the wheat. The Departments of Agriculture established checkpoints and sanitizing points, and as the equipment moved from one location to another, it all had to be sanitized and a certificate of release. And I think if we have to, I think we can go to that.
Agriculture obviously is essential, and we have to bring the crop in, of course.
Food is food.
That's right. Let's talk about any other concerns maybe as we look toward harvest in Oklahoma.
Well, as you producers are always concerned with price, we'd like to have a higher price, and then there's weather. You know, in the middle of this last week, they were talking about 32-degree nighttime temperatures in Oklahoma and Kansas. That could create some freeze damage. I think they've raised those minimum temperatures. But, you know, predicting the weather is, I think, tougher than predicting price.
Let's talk about summer crops a little bit. It is that time of year when people will be getting all of those crops rolling. What kind of things is the market offering?
Well, if you look at the forward contract prices, let's start with wheat. It's a winter crop, but right now it's a $465 to $470. It's been staying around that. That's down. A few weeks ago, it was up to about $490. Corn is $3.20. That's down from $360. Milo at $3, down from $340. Soybeans $7.80, down from $8.30. You got cotton at 55 cents, which is a surprise to me. It's down from 63 to 65. Sesame, the last number I heard was about 35 cents a pound for that, and canola is about $4.80 right now.
All righty, Kim, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week. That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime online at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Be well and be safe, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.